All right, so we are in Unit 11, and right now we're going to talk about angle relationships. Hopefully today you got familiar with angles and measuring angles and sketching some angles out. Now we're going to talk about how some angles have certain relationships with other angles. So we're going to start with a few points, and we're going to make some rays. And those rays are going to form a couple different angles. You can see here that there's angle ABC and angle CBD. All right, these two angles are next to each other, and the word adjacent means next to, so we call these two angles adjacent angles, because that's what the word adjacent means. They share a vertex, and they share one side. So adjacent angles are just any two angles that are next to each other. They're like touching right up against each other. So these two angles are adjacent. All right, not all angles are adjacent, but if you made a crisscross of two lines like this, you would have some angles that are next to each other and some that are across from each other. Vertical angles are the ones that aren't next to each other, they're across from each other. All right, you see what I mean by across from each other? Yeah. Okay, so, wait a second. Oh, yeah, there's actually two sets of vertical angles. There's the left and right ones that are across from each other, and there's the up and down ones that are across from each other. And you know what? Vertical angles aren't just across from each other, but they also just happen to always be equal to each other, so that if you measured them with a protractor, they would both come out to the same number of degrees. Like maybe something like this. Okay. Vertical angles are across from each other and they're always equal. Okay, so what if you had a crisscross like this, and I just told you that one of those four angles was 100 degrees? You actually should be able to figure out what the other three angles are. You could figure out this angle is 80. How did we know that that angle was 80? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But you should know that this angle is 100 because it's a vertical angle with that other 100, and I just told you a minute ago that vertical angles are equal. And if the other vertical angle over there is 80 to this 80, those two should both be 80 as well. But wait a second, how did we know that that other one was 80 to begin with? Well, we knew that these two angles had to add up to 180 degrees because if you put them together, they make a straight line, and a straight line is 180 degrees, because a straight line would be like going halfway towards 360 degrees all the way back around to where you started off. Hopefully that makes sense to you. But for now, let's learn a new term. Two angles that add up to 180 degrees are called supplementary angles. These two angles that are 100 degrees and 80 degrees are supplementary angles because if you put them together they make 180 degrees. So supplementary angles are any two angles that add up to 180 degrees. It could be that one of them's 100 and one of them's 80. It could be that one of them's 179 and the other one's 1. Any two angles that add up to a total of 180 degrees are supplementary. Now, let's take a totally different situation. Let's talk about a square. A square has four right angles, four 90-degree angles, right? Yeah. What if you cut a square in half and made it two triangles? Well, this angle right here was 90 degrees, but didn't we just split that 90 degrees in half? Yeah, so that means each of those smaller parts of the 90-degree angle would have to be 45 degrees. Kind of makes sense, right? Well, there's a name for that too. If the two angles don't add up to 180 but they add up to 90, they're not called supplementary, they're called complementary. So complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. And they complement each other really nicely. Also, you need to know this. These two angles are both 45 degrees, They're the same measurements. They're equal. Two angles that are equal are called congruent angles. Congruent and equal mean the same thing. So the word congruent is really just geometry's fancy version of the word equal. Congruent basically means the same thing as equal. Okay, here's a review. Adjacent angles are next to each other. Vertical angles are across from each other. Two angles that add up to 180 degrees are called supplementary angles. Two angles that add up to 90 degrees are called complementary angles. Congruent is just geometry's version of the word equal. All right, how about this? Try drawing two angles that are supplementary and tell how many degrees each one is. Remember what supplementary means. It means that the two angles have to add up to 180 degrees. All right, then I want you to make two intersecting lines that crisscross each other, maybe in like an X kind of a shape, and then label which angles that you made with those two intersecting lines are vertical angles with each other. Remember, vertical angles are across from each other. Okay, so angle relationships. Some angles are adjacent, some angles are vertical, some angles are complementary, some angles are supplementary, some angles are even congruent. They're equal. That's all we got to say. See you next time.